Greetings, and welcome to another segment of Let's Talk and Grow with Ms Roshumba. First of all, I want to give honor to our Creator, for which all things are and will forever be in this vast universe that we dwell in. Secondly, as you all know, my inspiration for this show has been from my dearly departed friend, Mr. Early Laverne. Mr. Early Laverne, I have used, I've come to know back in 2011, and from 2011 to 2013, he was my inspiration. He's a poet, been through so much traumatic situations in his life. Ultimately, he left us, but he left very much a special touch in my heart. So that said, I will one day elaborate about his story because it is worth telling. And as you know, my show right now is about Let the Black Man Speak. But I'm going to begin with a poem that was written by Mr. Early Laverne. I have a young man named Shahad that's going to speak it. You will not see his face, but you'll hear his powerful voice. The poem is called Built to Stand and Will Not Fall. Go ahead, young man.
Built to stand and will not fall. Developing as a child, I did childish things. Reaching maturity, I now think as a king. I am secured in my destiny's call. Built to stand and will not fall. I will soar to incredible heights, disposing of obstacles with all my might. My physical being often grows uptight. However, not anything can induce my powerful insight. Needless to say, I have been born a success. My past fallings does not make me anyone less. I know very clearly my direction. I'm geared towards one day reaching perfection. My increasing progress is on the ball, built to stand and will not fall. The essence of my mission is to gain a loving heart. I am that symbol of a beautiful park. I am planting into this world some powerful seeds. My focus is centered on my people's needs. I should not hesitate to give my all, built to stand and will not fall.
Asheo, Asheo. Thank you so much, young man. Thank you so much. One day I may have him on this side of the camera because you can see that voice is powerful and so is his mind. So we are here at the Florin Square at 2251 Florin Road in the Obama Room. And today I have a guest. His name is Mr. Dale McKinney. And he is an attorney. He has an office here in the building. So if you need an attorney, that's where you will find him. I'm going to get to know him a little bit more as we progress. I do want to say, first of all, thumbs up if you like what we're doing, and subscribe if you want to continue following and learning. And also, at the end, you know I always do my part, my poem. So I just want to remind you of that. So we are the ones we've been waiting for. No one is going to come and save us. It must be us. So we are the star, and this is the star for today. Mr. McKinney, welcome.
Yes,
welcome. And I thank you for the opportunity to sit with you and to learn your greatness. So, who is Mr. McKinney? Who is Dale? And why is your story important to us all today, sir?
My story is the story of a black man born in 1950 who came into young adulthood in the late 60s and early 70s And so therefore I am a product of the Black Power era. And the survivor of the Black Power era. And so that's the significance of my story, because a lot of misinformation has been disseminated about the Black Power era. So being a survivor of that era,
Yes.
I think it's important to set the record straight.
Correct. Well, thank you. That was a powerful era. The era of Black power and coming into understanding that we do have the power. And to see you sitting here today, you are a survivor of it, which is even that much more powerful.
Yes, ma'am.
What would you say has been the most difficult obstacle you've encountered living as a Black man in this country, especially having spoken about that era? What did you learn from that era? What kind of benefits did you say you got from it?
Well, I learned a number of things, but I'd like to say that. What was the question again?
Well,
what was my inspiration?
Yeah, the most difficult obstacles that you encounter as a Black man in this country.
In this country.
You
The
know.
most difficult obstacles has been just surviving, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually as well. Because one of the things that I've learned about this country and how they deal with Black men is that, first of all, if you don't pass the attitude test, then they either try to assassinate you physically or they assassinate your character, which they do to destroy your credibility as a human being. And so that's what I've encountered. In my lifetime during this period, I've been accused of a number of things, all of which were untrue.
Right.
But I was convicted of being essentially an angry young Black man who took his anger and went on a shooting spree, where 2 people were assaulted and 1 person was killed. And even though I was not part of the crime, because of the situation I found myself in, which is I was a member of the Nation of Islam at the time, 1974, and because I'd been charged with another police killing in 1970 that ended up being a cold case, the murder of Patrolman Bernard Bennett, who was shot May the 9th, 1970 in front of the former Black Panther office on 35th Street in Oak Park between 4th and 5th Avenue. I was charged with that back in 1970. 4 young men went on trial for that. I was released. 4 young men went on trial for that, who were later, the charges were dropped, which was a legally tactical move to preserve the statute of limitations to be able to charge them with it again if the authorities gathered some more evidence. And so, so that was in 1970. The trial was halted in 1971, but the police killing of Bernard Bennett from 1970 has not been solved. And so the problem with that is, because it's a cold case and because I was involved with it, that's been over my head. It's been hanging over my head for the past 54 years, 52 years. Because it happened in 1970, this is 2022. I'm still suspected and could be charged with that case if they were able to find evidence. And then it was used in the case that I was convicted of as a reason for holding me and charging me with another police shooting that happened 4 years later. So the most difficult thing that I've encountered as a Black man is that, like I said, you get there are always assassination attempts against the black man by the system itself. And to survive it, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually, is an accomplishment, I believe.
Right. And for you sharing that very personal and powerful story, your life experience, I respect you for that, my brethren.
Thank you.
I respect you for that, and I'm even more awed to be sitting in your presence.
Yes,
because these are the reasons why I say your words and being able to share them and tell your story, is that it just makes you that much more valuable, not just to about your story, but to our community and to our people, and especially to the young men that are coming up daily, that are already starting to feel the effects of living in this society. To hear your story and to see that you're sitting here a survivor should really make you out there feel really good, to know that you can make it through.
You can.
You can make it through, and in truth has a way of always putting you right back on the lane in which you need to be to begin with.
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to ask you, what did you get a lot of support from the community to get through this? Was it your belief in Allah? What was your spiritual belief that made you able to overcome a system that did not want to see you free and live happily within it?
Yes, ma'am. Well, my experiences with the community. My community has always been there for me, whether it was collectively or individually. I've always had someone in my life from my community who either encouraged me, supported me, defended me,
Yes.
informed me, protected me.
Yes.
And so I like to make it clear that anything good that I've done in my life has been the result of my community.
Yes.
Starting with my grandmother, who taught me how to read and write before I started school, continuing with my mother, who taught me to be proud to be a person of African descent, to my father, who gave me a work ethic, to my grandfather, who gave me the theory behind working, and then, so that was in my family.
Yes.
Outside of my family, I had, I'm an electrician by trade, and one of the people that helped me get into the trade was another member of my community, who took me in right after the incident with the police officer, when,
Yes.
I was, considered off limits.
Right.
He took me in and helped me get into the electrical trade. And then when I went to prison, I met another black man who was my therapist,
Okay.
who taught me to accept responsibility for my situation. And the reason why he thought that was important, and it was important, because doing life in prison back in the early 70s, when you do life in prison in California,
Yes.
you, in order to get out, you have to have what they call a psychiatric clearance,
Okay.
which means that you go to what they call group therapy.
Okay.
And in group therapy, you talk about the crime, what you were thinking at the time,
Right.
what you've learned in the interim, and how you will conduct yourself in the future to not find yourself in that same predicament.
Correct.
And so I had difficulty with the therapy session because I hadn't committed a crime.
Right. Which is
So
a
whenever,
conflict.
so whenever it was my turn to speak, I always said, well, I don't have anything to fix.
Right.
I haven't done anything. I wasn't guilty of the crime. I didn't know anything about the crime at the time that it happened. And so, and I'm going to mention this person by name. His name was Dr. Isaac Slaughter. Dr. Isaac Slaughter asked me a few questions. He said, so you're innocent, huh? And I said, yes, I am. He said, so, but tell me this. He said, is it possible that you could have not gone to prison had you cooperated with the police? And I said, yeah, that was a possibility. He said, did you ever consider that as an option? And I told him, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And he said, oh, okay. So, but you admit that had you cooperated with the police, you may not have gone to prison. Is that right? And I said, yes, sir. He said, but you chose not to cooperate with the police. And so you knew by not cooperating with the police, you could end up in prison. And I said, yes, sir. He said, so then you're in prison by choice. So he said, so since you got yourself into this, get yourself out of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I guess one of the questions I would have asked him, what is cooperating with the police?
Well,
is it agreeing that I am guilty? What does that mean? Because that's...
No, what it means is that you tell the police, what cooperating with the police means in colloquial terms, snitching.
Okay,
Turn state's evidence and testify against everybody else.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, and I'm like, no.
Okay.
So he said, so you admitted that you made a conscious choice not to cooperate with the police. I said, that's right. I made a conscious choice. He said, so you're in prison by choice. And one of the things that did for me, because up until that point, I had made myself out to be the victim.
Yes.
And the problem with making yourself out to be the victim is you're waiting on someone else to come rescue you from your situation, which will never happen.
You hear that? When you make yourself out to be a victim, you think someone is going to come and save you
from your situation. And the only person who's really empowered to save you is you.
Is you.
And so once Dr. Slaughter taught me that lesson, everything that I've tried to do since then, I've been able to do because I realized that the only person who could get in my way was me.
Ah, interesting.
You see?
Yeah.
And getting in my way was how I thought. You see, how you think. So if you think you can do something, you will.
That's correct.
If you think you cannot do something, you won't.
You won't.
And so whatever you think, you're right.
Yeah.
So it's important to think positively,
correct.
to have positive thoughts, and it's important to accept the responsibility for your situation so that you can figure your way out of your predicament.
Yes. And I love all that you've shared. But one thing I wanted to say, when you're a young individual, especially African male, African women too, but African male especially, because we know that system just leads the one to a rites of passage right into the prison system daily, every day. So to the graveyard, correct. But we also know we have an educational system that teaches you to be inferior. So it teaches you to work against yourself, not to believe in yourself. And especially if you come from homes that are been affected by that same system, how do you gather the understanding that through it all, I'm still worthy, I'm still good, I still should be here, when they've taught you, number one, especially for a lot of African American men, they've taught you not to even read. And they taught you not to love yourself. And through the movies and all those other medium, they show you in positions that, degrade you. So, oftentimes to reach what you've shared with us is usually after the fact, after you've been tracked down and caught and incarcerated, then the awakening occurred. So, but I did hear you say that you have a community. That
I've always been supported.
Your family,
my family
your
first,
community. and
then others in the external outside of my family.
Right.
And like I said, it was a black man that got me into the electrical trade. It was a black man that helped me rid myself of the victim mentality. It was a black woman who gave me a job fresh out of prison on parole. You see?
Do you think those people exist still? And one thing I want to back up a little bit and say, because the support first started in your home with your family.
Yes.
But there's the adolescent years that is very special years.
Challenging.
It's the challenging years where you're discovering the world, and the world seems like they have traps set for you. That even if you have people that love you, that have been guiding you all the way, after a while you start to see them as suspect.
That's true.
Because, and I think this is where the educational system make you question your family and the love they have for you.
Right.
And until you get into their system, then is when you finally could realize that they've loved you all along. They've been with you all along. But by then, so what would you say to the parents that are raising young youths now that are starting to get into that adolescent years? What would you say to the single mothers that have those boys, or those fathers that are struggling with those sons and those boys directly? What can they do before that time hits them? And what to look at if they're going through it right now? What would you say to them?
That's a difficult question to answer because, first of all, circumstances are different. Raising children is like what I like to call OJT. It's on the job training.
Job training.
You operate based on your understanding, how you were raised, and what you paid attention to, and what you observed, and being in this society, it really takes it's a challenge for the parents to do everything they can to provide for their children and teach them. When I was growing up, our parents, my grandparents said their job was to help me and my siblings and to do better than what they did.
That's right.
I don't hear that anymore, even though I know it's still out there.
Right.
It's just that, you just do the best you can with what you have, and then any resources. One of the things that helped me come back, because I went through just what you said. It took me a while to realize that my parents were right. After I started getting in trouble.
Exactly.
And so what happened, well, they weren't completely right, because one of the things that I had difficult with my parents was they used to say, don't do as I do as I say do. And I think that as a parent, whatever instructions you give to your children, you should be prepared to follow.
Yes.
I was raised in a house where there was smoking and drinking.
Right.
And so they told me not to smoke and drink, but I smoked and drank.
Right. And
because it was right there. I didn't have to leave the house.
Right.
You see, so I thought that was hypocritical.
Right.
For them to tell me not to do something that they actually did.
That they couldn't
Yeah.
stop themselves.
Right. And so then the other thing I'm against as a parent is corporal punishment. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but I'm saying it should only be used sparingly. And the reason why I said it, because I don't trace beatings and whippings to Africa. I think that came from our slavery experience. If you didn't pick a certain amount of cotton, then you got whipped. If you displayed a certain attitude, you got whipped.
That's correct.
And so, so we've continued that practice. And so I'm against it, I
agree with you. And the reason why I would support what you're saying is, the most important job that we all have if we have children is parenting. And
Most important job in life.
there's no school for it. You actually take your brokenness or your strength from having been parents.
That's right.
To your job as parenting.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, it's also, and when you live in a society that does not recognize and value you as a people, and you wake up daily playing combativeness against a system that, number one, miseducates you in the school, number two, treats you bad in the workforce, number three, their narrative of you is always on the decline rather than the incline.
Right.
You know, I see the importance of the community. So when mom and dad fails, that's where the community should step up. And I really speak about that because it's so important, because when we hear on the news that they've captured some guy from having driven the wrong way on a freeway, ran into a police and killed them, and now he's in prison, sitting in jail, our community should say, what happened? Collectively, and see what we can do, because then we should ask the question, you know, what was on the young youth's mind? Why was he intoxicated or whatever caused him to be in that position? It should matter to us. It should matter to the world, but especially us. So community plays a big part, because if they do great, if they've done stunning stuff, if they get these degrees that ends them up in Ivy League, we should also be celebrating that he's a representation of the we.
Well,
so I think. Yeah.
Okay, let me say this about that. You know, one of the things that I think we need to emphasize in our community, especially among our children, is that civilization came into being in Africa. And we taught the world to read, write, and count.
Correct.
You see. And having done that, if we know that about who we are, then that's encouraging.
Correct.
That tells us, you know. So one of the things we have to make sure our children know is they have to have an accurate historical record of where they come from.
And whose responsibility is it to teach them that? Because, you know, if we've been educated in this system from K to 12, majority of the adults that you will meet right now do not know our story.
They don't know our story, which is interesting now. And I say that for this reason. Is because with the technology, the internet, Google, you know, if you have access to that technology, then if you don't know, it's because, well, you know, I like to quote Malcolm. Malcolm said a couple of things, well, not a couple, a number of things.
Yeah,
Malcolm. One of the things he said is that only a fool would send their child to the enemy to get an education.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
And then the other thing he said is, you know, we have to be careful about the information that we take in.
Correct.
You know, because one of our problems is we've been hoodwinked.
Yes.
Bamboozled and led astray.
That's correct. And and you're correct. You are correct. But in our bamboozling, we end up having to make a living. The bamboozling means that our relationships are toxic with each other, man and woman, and the children are eating the pain of that. In our bamboozling, we're chasing the dollar so we don't end up on the streets. So, and then sending them to those same schools we're talking about. So ultimately, I think what we have to do is, when we come to like the place that we're here now, Florence Square, which has, you know, vendors, they have different things that are going on in our community. This is important because it helps us to understand that we could go to a place to be reminded of our story.
Who we are, where we're from.
Yeah, and I want to elaborate on that, if I may.
Sure.
Because we cannot ever forget that we live in a system that is somebody else's narrative. You know, we have to define what is our narrative as a people. Because our brokenness in our relationship is because we're using somebody else's judgment of what a black man and black woman relationship should look like. the schooling for our children, our education, and all the way down to that techie device that we look and follow. And so, you know, it covers a lot of what you've said, but oftentimes is after the fact that we see. You know, one of the things from the past is our elders used to not tell us their personal story. It was
Right.
very private.
Very private.
And
Because
so how else are we gonna know?
Right.
They used to say Africa is not, don't call me African. So we're evolving. So now that we're in the techie time, and like you mentioned, let's go and find out the information. But the techie is also leading us not in the healthy way either.
Astray.
Right.
And so that's why you have to know who you are. See, you have to, I have connected myself to historical figures.
Yes.
You see,
Like Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. But my most favorite hero
Oh, I was going to ask you that too. Yeah, your
in
role model,
America
right?
is Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman.
Because Harriet Tubman, I think, showed us practically everything we needed to know in this sense.
Yes.
First of all, she got herself free. And then after she got herself free, she went back and got her family. And then after she got her family, then she went back and got everyone else that wanted to be free.
That wanted to be free, correct.
So then if you look at her relationship with the people that helped her,
Yes.
if you look at how she was able to successfully lead people to freedom
Right.
without one being betrayed,
Right.
two being caught.
Right.
You see, that human relationships that she established with people
Right.
as part of the Underground Railroad is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You see?
And what would you say that made it that possible for her to be so unique? Because sometimes you're helping people, and the ones you're helping the most are the ones that's tearing you down the most.
But
so it may
you
have
have to
been
have
the
a
time.
plan. You have to have a plan. Just like, they said, once you left with her, you couldn't go back. She got that straight from the beginning. We're leaving. Once we go out here, you can't come back.
You got to be
you
clear.
either make it to freedom or you die.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
And so,
And it really mattered.
That's right.
It
because
really mattered,
if
yeah.
you go back, you could tell people
That's right.
where you went and who was what. And you see
Okay.
what I'm saying?
And yeah, because sometimes we could become our own worst enemy because the ego gets involved. And when ego gets involved,
ego, emotions. And so
Emotions.
that's why I think her story is the best story for us to follow as far as because she was, and I don't like to use this term, but I think it's appropriate here, she was successful. You see, in her accomplishments.
Her time.
Everything she set out to do, she did. And then she continued it. After the war, after she was successful in the war, then she took on other causes. Elderly, women's right to vote. She was active her whole life. And so we have to follow that example.
Yeah, and we have
to make those sacrifices for our community. And in looking out for our community, we're looking out for ourselves as well. Because the more people you look out for, the more people you have to look out for you.
that's correct.
You see?
That's correct.
Because like my Dr. Slaughter taught me, he said, you're not an automaton. And one of the things I learned in prison is the importance of people.
Yes.
You can do without a lot of things, but human interaction is vital to the human being.
Exactly.
You see, so
Exactly. And what I've come to see over my years is that even the love that we have for each other has been weaponized.
If you
weaponized.
don't know who you are,
Which oftentimes in this system, that use their narrative, their educational system, is what, they use against us, that make us have to really look and read between the line. And the effects of the technology brings another added level of confusion. Okay. So, not saying it's impossible, because we're here today, maybe because I'm an elder and you're an elder, so part of our elderness says that we overcome those challenges. So it can be done, people. It can be done. You just have to find unique ways, and don't act so quickly. Think about your moves before you make them. And what do you think about literature? The importance of literature, reading, and those types of things?
Very important. It's very important. Literature. One of the things I learned is that in prison, we exercise a lot in prison.
Okay.
Physically.
Okay.
But then, when I went to prison, I had already read the autobiography of Malcolm X, as well as a book called George Jackson's Letters of a Soledad Brother.
Yes, I've heard of both those books. Yeah.
And so, so what I also realized from being in prison is that mental exercises are as important as physical exercises. And so you want to read to exercise your mind.
You hear that?
Because, not just read, write, and count.
Correct. Which one affects the other.
That's right. And so if you're exercising your mind and your body, they work together. A healthy mind and a healthy body weaponize you.
Exactly.
To deal with
society,
the circumstances
That's
that
correct.
you find yourself in. So you have to. So I recommend reading, writing on a regular basis as exercise, along with physical exercise, along with eating properly. Eating properly.
That's huge.
You see,
that alone is huge.
Because one of the things that we were forced to eat as a result of slavery, which has led to our disease-filled life, heart attack, diabetes, obesity,
heart disease,
all of those things come as a result of this slave diet.
Yes.
You see,
it's been weaponized.
Everything was weaponized to keep us subjugated. And so when you learn that, and I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but
I don't
when you learn that the chitlins and the hog maws and the pickled pig feet, you ate that when that's all you had to eat. Correct. And you had to eat it to survive.
Right.
But now you shouldn't eat that if you don't have to.
When you know better, you do better.
You're supposed to.
And so that's why this show is kind of very important, because sometimes we have not come out of that box.
That's right.
And we're still doing it because mom did it, grandpa did it, and so on and so forth.
Or we've been addicted to it to the level that we
find comfort in it.
That's right.
And that comfort,
For example, one thing capitalism does.
Capitalism, yes.
It capitalizes off people's weaknesses.
You hear that?
So it supplies you with these. First, it addicts you to food, drink, alcohol, tobacco, gambling. It
gets you addicted.
It gets you addicted, and then it capitalizes off your weaknesses by selling you.
That's big.
You see.
What Mr. McKinney just said is huge. So when you go for that food, when you go to gamble, with all of those things, you have to ask, who benefits? Who benefits when I eat too much? Who benefits? Well, we know they I don't know about you, but back where I'm from, well, I grew up in the Bay Area, let's put it that way.
Yeah. But
there were no kidney dialysis businesses around when we were growing up, right?
Right.
And so that's the new capitalization. They're almost around every corner, like there is a pharmacist.
That's right.
So one of the main things that you said that really stood out in my mind especially is when you eat differently, you even start to think clearer. You know, that's huge. You start to think clearer about what is happening and see your real power.
One of the things as Africans we had was spirituality. And spirituality impacts every, the Western man, the church is not like African spirituality, because African spirituality affects everything you do.
Right.
Your eating, your conversation, your sleeping, how you dress, how you feel about yourself. Right. There's a spiritual component to all of it. The fact that this Western man has come up with church and a religion that he has to observe inside a building on certain days is
in contradiction to who we are.
It has not worked for us because we're spiritual beings.
Exactly.
You see, so if you understand that aspect of it, where your attitude dictates how you address and things and how you live your life. If you're spiritual, then that makes you positive. And having a positive attitude is everything.
Exactly.
Because when you have a positive attitude, you believe that things will go well.
Right.
That things will go like they're supposed to go.
Exactly.
And so, even when things go wrong, with a positive attitude,
will bring you right back.
You say, okay, there's a lesson in here for me to learn. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, on the other hand, the negative attitude has just the opposite effect. Even when things happen for you, even when good things happen for you, because your negative attitude causes you to be suspicious.
Exactly.
You see, you'll overlook or miss the blessing in whatever
the lessons, the blessings and the lessons
because of your attitude.
Yeah.
So
the diet,
diet, exercise,
all of that helps.
And when I say diet, also what you take into your mind, what you read, what you listen to, the music.
Netflix, all the movies, and that's why I always want to say your telephone, your devices, the internet. If you don't understand, these are all tools, like a hammer and a screwdriver. And you use tools. I'm an electrician by trade, and I'm thankful that I got into the trade, because one of the things that I learned from being an electrician is I build and I fix. Prior to becoming an electrician, coming through the Black Power era, being angry, I knew how to tear things down, but I didn't know how to put something up better in its place, you see. And so now I do. I wouldn't set anything afire, I wouldn't tear anything down unless I was prepared to put something better in its place. And so the tearing down that you were as a young youth, because that's when you were young, right?
Right, absolutely.
And it was an anger thing, that's why you wanted to tear it down, because it wasn't working for you.
Right.
But over time, the buildup occurred.
Right.
When you understood, would you say that? Because it's kind of like a metaphor, not literally always tearing down, but just tearing down, the lies that were told to you in the system, in school, in everything. Even sometimes, like you said, your parents said, don't drink, but they drank, or, so all of that is in conflict.
Right.
So in finding your way through, you started to build up the new you.
Right. Well, actually, the old you, because you've had it.
Yeah.
You see, but you chose to ignore it.
Which creates a new mindset.
Right. So then when you run into challenges, then you revert back to what you were taught. You see, that's why it's important to be taught
The foundation.
a foundation. And so if you can't get it at home, then you have to be able to get it from somewhere else.
That's where our community, I would say, plays a very big
Very
part, because
important role.
you learn to be an electrician from someone to say, come with me,
Yeah,
correct?
that's right.
Okay, and you're an attorney also. Tell me how you came about to become an attorney,
Well,
and why you chose that. Was it later in life?
It was later in life. I only chose to become an attorney because of what happened with being incarcerated for a crime I didn't commit.
Oh, so he took something that was not, you see, the best for him, and he decided that he was going to get the key to fix it, and he became an attorney.
So
Congratulations, my brother. That's huge.
well, but that came from the community as well.
The community supported it.
Because I was in prison, and I was talking to another young black man that was in prison, and he told me, he said, my crew, whenever we wanted to do anything and we couldn't find anybody to do it for us, then one of us would go learn it and then come back and bring it back to the community. And I'm like, okay, And
Did you hear that, audience?
And so,
what do we need in our community? Who's going to go out there and learn it and bring it back for us?
to the community. And so now I'm in prison, right? And I'm watching Willie Brown, who at the time was the Speaker of the Assembly.
I remember.
And I kept seeing how every time he looked up, someone was after him, challenging him and trying, he was, let me put it to you like this. Seemed like every time I looked up, he was under some kind of investigation.
Yes.
And I'm like, and then through all of that, he would always manage to come out of it with no
unscathed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, wow, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
I want to have that assurance in myself that when I'm being challenged,
you too could come out.
I can overcome these challenges, because that's all they are.
That's all they
They're
are.
not obstacles, they're challenges to be overcome. And so, and then the other part of that was this. I said, well, because during my trial, I took the stand in my own behalf. I had witnesses and documents showing I was innocent, but I was found guilty anyway. And I'm like, okay. The only thing I didn't do was I didn't know the law.
Right.
So I couldn't defend myself. So I said, if that ever happens to me again, I would know the law. So I would be able to participate in my own legal defense, because I understood that if they got you once, they could always get you again, because it's easier. See, because at this point now I'm a convicted felon. You see? So I have to be careful where I go, what I do, who I do it with. Because if I were to get picked up, they would target me. Because I'm a convicted felon.
Can I ask you, do you think that, even if you were an attorney at that time, knowing the law, because when you think about the law, it's a narrative of their system.
Right.
So it's always going to lean in their favor.
Absolutely.
So you may have won it.
Right.
But because it's their system.
I lost my life as a result. Because once they target you, once they get it in their mind that they have to put you in your place, then,
So you see, young people, that's one of the things you have to be able to have an understanding about. First, you have to know your history.
You have to know who you are.
And you have to know who you are, know your history, know the environment in which you live in. Strengthen yourself through good diet, taking care of your body, because when you put all that in line, it helps you to deal with a system that was not designed for you to thrive or rise in.
No.
But I also, these are the years of Africa. Africa is thriving. Ghana says, come home, you could buy land here. So one of the things that I've traveled to Africa one time, to 2 different countries, and I always want our people to know you're not limited to living in this country. We just finished celebrating Juneteenth, first holiday of it. It started last year, but this is the first official holiday of recognizing the freedom of our enslavement in this country, 1865. When it happened, they're finally celebrating it, and this was the weekend of doing so. So things are shifting in many different directions. So I just think it's very important for we to know who we are. So when the change occurs, we're right up front, and we're making the change. We're not waiting for people to bring it to us. We're making it ourselves.
That's right.
And so as we unwind, because this is lovely, we can see it's needed, and we could go on and talk, because your story is powerful, is riveting, and it should not be allowed to just be in an hour.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know there's a lot of people that benefit from what you're saying, and I so respect you.
Thank you.
Because you are a warrior that lived in a system that wanted to snuff your life or snuff your body and your mind. And you're sitting here showing us that you overcame, and we appreciate it. And not only that, but you're rising.
With assistance.
With assistance.
Make that clear. I'm not a promoter of rugged individualism.
Well, let's go to this little symbol I have here. I am my brothers and sisters' keeper.
Absolutely.
You see this symbol? Pulling one, we have to pull each other up.
Absolutely.
And this is very important to me, to bring it here today to remind us that I'm nothing without my brother, and hopefully he will say the same about me.
Oh, no question about it. As a matter of fact, we have to get back. Our spirituality comes from there was a Senegalese person named Dr. Sheikh
Antidia. Oh, yes.
And one of the things he said is that we were, in a book I have, he said, when he describes the difference between us and others, is that we're matrilineal.
Yes.
The power comes down through the woman.
Through the woman.
And so we have to get back to that.
Yes.
We have to get back to the fact that the woman should lead us and the men should support the women.
Please say that to the camera, sir, because that is huge. Because a lot of our relationship issues is about that, because the system has weaponized us against each other.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when we go on the streets now, we see so many black men thrown away under the bush behind garbage like nothing. It's been a breakdown of that black man and black woman relationship, that's been weaponized. So I was going to ask, is black love fading away? Well, the question is, what is causing it to fade away? And
being under the influence of Western so-called civilization.
And the conflict of the matriarch against the patriarch.
Right. When the patriarch ought to relent to the matriarch, because we all have to come here through a woman.
Thank you.
You see, and so she's connected to us like the man is not.
Yes.
And so if the women were in charge, if the true African woman was in charge, we would be at peace and prosperity, and everyone would be looked out for like they should be. But because this Western man is in charge, it's nothing but chaos and confusion.
Their narrative. So we have to start developing what is our narrative. Start using it. And if we've forgotten, it's an internal thing. It's an internal thing. The drum of Africa still radiates within us. That's why we're still here. Because if we'd have lost our way, we would have been annihilated and extinct. But it speaks to who we are. So I am loving what you're saying, and I'm going to start to close it down, and I want to ask you to finish this sentence. The most valuable commodity we have is
our humanity.
Our humanity. That's right. Our humanity. You want to elaborate a little on that?
Historically, our humanity brought us together. and taught us how to work with each other in order to be civilized and build a civilization.
Keyword civilized.
Civilized, peaceful, working in cooperation as opposed to competition. You see, we go a lot further if we work together than we will trying to prove one is better than the other, which is a fallacy. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. The difference being that some of us realize, have become aware of where our strengths lie and work to focus on those, while many of us do not know. And so we have to learn that. So if you recognize, if you're aware of your humanity, that my responsibility to myself and to you is to help you in a peaceful manner. Everything is peaceful. I work to get along with you peacefully. If I cannot work with you peacefully, then I leave you peacefully. You see, understanding that I love for you what I love for myself.
That's right. That's correct.
So that's our
wow, wow. And we came with it. It's not like something that has to be taught to us. It's a system that taught us not to think that way.
Right.
And there was a time that there was a shift around 5 or 6 where you felt like something isn't right here, but I have to swallow it anyway.
Right.
But so I'm so glad we had this opportunity to talk and share. And I'm going to finish off with called Many Rivers I Have Crossed. And this is good for him too. Many rivers I have crossed. Many mountains I have climbed. Many moons I have seen to arrive at this place. Many faces I have seen. Many conversations in between have guided me to this newfound destiny. Now, what am I to tell this child that looks up at me with bold, beautiful eyes? How shall I tell this little one that it be's the mystery given unto man that will lead us by the hand to this futuristic place way beyond? It's in the choices presented to us daily that we must go to make sense of the chaos that's been fed to the weak and the weary. There's one thing I believe to be true. Long before there was me and even you, existed is our creator, a gentle power, the essence of the me and the you. So fret not, my human family. Let's allow the sacred spirit to guide we through the many rivers, over the highest of mountains, to the fullest of moons, to brighten the darkest of nights. Yes, my brothers and sisters, victory will be sweet when the sun arises to greet we, and our oneness is all that our souls can see. When everywhere we look, pain and shame is no more, replaced with joy and love, the true essence of we. Go now, enjoy your birthright. Destiny awaits thee. Asheo, amen. And thank you for listening. Thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll continue. Thank you, Mr. McKinney.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here and doing your part.